All right, what you got? What you got? What you got? Oh no, a fireball. Anyway. I've had a virtual reality headset for almost a year and a half now. And in that time, I've had some mind-blowing, amazing experiences. But of every game I've ever played, of every program I've put through these lenses, it always blows my mind just how good Blade and Sorcery is. This isn't a criticism video. I'd be hard-pressed to actually find a bad thing about this game. The visuals are top-notch, the audio is satisfying, the performance is smooth, and the combat is some of the best out there. Incoming! This game hits every checkbox there is. But that's not the point I want to cover in this video. Because if there's one thing, one crucial thing that I wish every VR game did the way Blade and Sorcery does, it's the learning curve. Pretty much every VR game today can fall into one of two categories. You have super advanced and complex games where there's a ton to do and a lot of great stuff, but you need a lot of prior experience with VR in order to understand mechanics, locomotion, and so that you don't vomit after 2 minutes of playing. And the other type of game are the super simple ones, where there isn't a whole lot to the gameplay, but the game can pretty much be played by anyone because it's so simple. Just think of every major VR game out there and it probably falls into one of these two types. Beat Saber, too boring. Bone Lab is too complex. Job Simulator is too short. Half-Life Alyx is too janky. VR Chat, okay, well you don't count your special. But obviously this creates a major problem, because as a person who owns a VR headset, it's becoming harder and harder to find games that don't fall into either category. And sure, I've been playing VR for a long time now, so I can easily get into the more complicated games. But when I want to show somebody else these games, they take off the headset after 30 minutes of playing because it's just too complicated for them. And of course, when I show people the simpler games, they can enjoy them, but they end up, again, putting down the headset after 30 minutes because they've seen everything the game has to offer. This is creating a huge issue for newcomers into the VR space. For people who haven't had prior experiences, it's hard for them to justify dropping $300+ on a VR headset because either the games are way too boring or just too complicated. VR gaming just isn't something that most people can get a grasp on right now, at least not to its fullest potential. Unless you were to pick up Blade and Sorcery. I recently showed my friends a bunch of VR games, Beat Saber, Superhot, Bone Lab, etc. And with all of these games, people either lost interest because it was just too complicated, or they lost interest because it was too boring. Except when I showed them Blade and Sorcery. Everyone, and I mean everyone who has picked up this game has managed to understand its mechanics and controls faster than pretty much any other VR game. And this game isn't simple either. There are a lot of mechanics and settings and controls and areas. This game has a very high skill ceiling, and there's a lot of advanced controls and mechanics, yet everyone who has played this game has managed to get into it just fine. This game's learning curve somehow is just perfect. The developers of this game have somehow made a VR game so complex and intricate, more accessible than with most other purpose-built VR games. And this game isn't bad either. After playing Bone Lab for a while, Blade and Sorcery honestly feels very similar in its sense of combat style and physics systems. Now, to be fair, Bone Lab was more designed around ranged weaponry like guns, while Blade and Sorcery was more designed around melee combat, but I still think it just shows how polished and well-made Blade Sorcery is. This game feels as good as the modern benchmark for VR gameplay. This game, for just being a glorified sandbox, is really, really well made. Now, I mean, that's not to say it's perfect. Okay. I did come across a few issues, and even one bug where changing the graphics settings caused the game to crash repeatedly on launch, forcing you to have to uninstall the game. Coding overloaded, yeah, no shit. Besides those issues, it's really, really good. And I do think certain things could be adjusted, seeing as how hard it is right now to check for your health. But these are minor things, and definitely not game-breaking, especially since the game isn't even technically finished yet. Yeah, this game, a game I am touting as one of the best VR games ever made, isn't even out of early access yet. This game is in a pre-release state, and it's already far more polished than a Bethesda game 3 years from launch. Actually, that's not that hard to beat. But regardless, this game is very good for being unfinished. There's a ton to do here and a lot of amazing experiences, and more is just going to be added. The devs have already stated that they want to add a progression system, dungeon crawling modes, more sandbox maps, more weapons, better refinements of the systems, and other things. And did I mention that this game fully supports mods too?
You shouldn't.
Oh yeah, come here. Oh, hold on. That intro bit of me pulling a gun, that was a mod that took me like a minute to install. This game is super easy to mod, and there's a ton of great ones out there, such as lightsabers, spells, and even whole campaign mods. Stop time. You're dead. The truth is, this game genuinely is one of my top 3 VR games ever. And this game is amazing even in its current early access state. Oh, I have the power of God and anime on my side. There's just so much fun packed into this game, and it's super easy to get into. There's no huge leaps of difficulty, no weird movement controls, no complex menus, and all the confusing mechanics can easily be learned. It all just works. This game looks great, runs great, feels great, it's all just perfect.